RPGs are about growth. Get money, get XP, get levels. I'm getting bread all the time. Battles are facilitators of that growth. You hit the guy, they hit you back. You kill them before they kill you. But that can't be all that happens during battles, otherwise you're playing a glorified, non-idle game. So enemies are unique. They have their own abilities, their own strengths and weaknesses, and their party composition can create chemistry. Your party has a clash with that. You adapt your party makeup and strategies so that, when you roll up into enemy territory, you minimize cost to your resources and maximize the loss of theirs. In short, RPGs are actually about gentrification. I think I set a good foundation for my game with passive defenses that create interesting outcomes, as well as special moves that can circumvent them at the cost of AP. But still, after the initial struggle of going into a new area and learning about the enemies, your strategy becomes routine. Battles aren't interesting. They just slowly drain resources as you go down the same decision tree that's worked for the other 10 battles. Because of that, battles stop being or feeling consequential. It's not always a bad thing. It's extremely satisfying to see that your strategic thinking is paying off. But sometimes, instead of death by 1,000 cuts, it's annoyance by 1,000 taps on the shoulder. Now, believe it or not, I think having punching bag enemy troops with similar composition is fine during the early game. You know, so that you can make sure that the player gets the basics and that they can get comfortable with the system. But moving into the later game, you could take the Mother 3 approach. Late into that game, random encounters were more like mini-bosses, but they were infrequent enough so that the player didn't get exhausted. So for my game, the closed beta will have a high enemy frequency that's still manageable. So with some temp assets, I threw together an enemy troop and... Why aren't the labels here? Where did they go? They're gone. They're just gone. Why are they gone? The assets that I made are still here in the game's files, so where did they go? Why isn't it here? What did you do? If it weren't for all this code in the previous devlog, this wouldn't have been possible. So what should the random encounter rate be? Answer 0. I'm getting rid of random encounters. Nobody likes random encounters. They feel more like that. It is so odd to me that a huge portion of the gameplay loop for this massive genre feels like it's interrupting the game itself. Players are conditioned to hate the meat of the gameplay, but I play video games because I wholeheartedly endorse and choose violence. Having overworld enemies helps a lot. It gives players a feeling of agency over the frequency of battles. But here's when things go wrong. Chrono Trigger sometimes has these invisible triggers for battles. They are essentially random encounters. Nice try. Mother 2 has enemies that are really difficult or impossible to avoid. So I'm going to have overworld enemies that are always visible, whose method of approach in the space around them makes it reasonable to avoid or engage with them. I just need to figure out something for advantages, and running away is something I'm still struggling with. You see these 5 bastards? I like to call them ripped from Zelda 2 and slightly edited some of them. They have different movements and different speeds at different frequencies. They have some sweet moves as well. They'll chase you. If you get too far ahead of them, nothing personnel, kid. Here's what this looks like off-screen. This will only be true on the overworld, so that there's always an enemy presence. You run into them, you gotta fight them. Them's the rules. Problem: the path to the next intended objective ain't that long. I want the player to get a little more familiar with battles. Solution: putting a dang-ass hostile area between the player and the first town. But don't worry, because you won't have to go through it every time. I made a little shortcut once you beat a toad. This place is looking pretty busy. Not too shabby. Now to test things out. I can't believe how much shit decided to go wrong. Some of which I still don't know what was wrong. I just tried stuff until it worked. I even read my code line by line and found nothing. For some reason, the game started crashing when you switch characters in battle. I had a flag set that immediately after battle, all enemy positions are reset and the player is invulnerable to battle initiation. But sometimes the player would be thrown into battle immediately anyway. The end of battle event would run twice for some reason and grant the player infinity EXP. I had to put an eval in there that asks, is this variable equal to endless? No? Cool. Run the program. Sometimes battles wouldn't initiate because... Sometimes all enemies would disappear after battles because... Sometimes my eye would start to twitch and leak green fluid. Sometimes I would get mushing of the brain. But it's over now. It's just the bosses. Okay, so these 2 bosses in Megal Tower aren't too bad. They're both a little cowardly, so if you hit one, they'll hide behind the other boss. They'll also switch defensive types. You don't want them side by side or else they'll heal. This means that the player must get comfortable with switching turn order or guarding, or else they'll just end up hitting their head against a wall until it breaks, which, I mean, the wall will break, sure, but at what cost? You have no idea what I had to go through to get that to work. Why is your HP not a number? How can't it be a number? I didn't even touch it. Why aren't you showing up? You're just dead? Either way, all of these problems solve themselves, because I don't know what I did to fix them. Last up is the boss of the actual tower. I don't want to give too much away, just know that it'll be a doozy. This solidifies the first dungeon as the tutorial after the tutorial. If you didn't learn, then you won't earn. There's only one battle left in the town you visit before the demo ends. Be seeing y'all.